Lucas sat in his office, the hum of the city below barely reaching his ears. The glowing lights from towering skyscrapers filtered through the glass, painting his desk in cold shades of blue and silver. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. His work at the firm had consumed him, the weight of deadlines and the pressure for career success pressing harder each day. Yet somewhere beneath the piles of paperwork and urgent emails, a nagging thought lingered. He was missing out on his family. Marina, his wife, and their children, Lily and Max, seemed like distant echoes of a life he once cherished. Lucas knew he was falling into a cycle of neglect. Every day, his dedication to his career grew stronger, but so did the quiet ache of knowing his family needed him more than ever. As the soft buzz of his phone broke the silence, Lucas glanced at the screen. It was a photo from Marina, a snapshot of Lily and Max laughing together, their faces glowing with happiness. A pang of guilt hit him. He could almost hear their voices calling for him to come home. But work always came first, didn't it? The image flickered on the screen, reminding him of what he was losing, a part of his life he hadn't even realized was slipping away. He'd been so focused on climbing the career ladder, the climb so steep that he forgot to stop and look around. The realization made his chest tighten. He had to change. Lucas vowed to make more time for his family, to be present for his children's milestones and for Marina, who had been patiently waiting for him to come home. No more excuses. Marina's days were a quiet repetition. Without Lucas, the house felt emptier, even though it was full of memories. The sound of laughter from their children, once a staple, was now replaced by silence. She filled the space with chores, volunteer work, and yoga, hoping the routine would ease the ache inside. But nothing seemed to fill the void Lucas left behind. She longed for his presence, for deep conversations, for shared moments. Instead, she found herself staring out the window, wishing for something, anything, to break the monotony. She reached out to others, volunteering at local shelters, attending yoga classes, trying to find something to fill her days. But it was clear to Marina that no matter how hard she tried, the connection she craved could only come from Lucas. And yet, the more she reached out, the further he seemed to slip away. One cold afternoon, while volunteering at a local food bank, Marina bumped into Evan, Lucas's best friend. They hadn't seen each other in years, but the familiarity of his face brought back memories of simpler times. They caught up on life, shared stories from their past, and laughed about old inside jokes. Evan's easygoing nature and genuine interest in her life made Marina feel at ease. Their meetings became frequent, and with each conversation she began to open up more about her life. She talked about Lucas, her feelings of isolation, and the deep loneliness that had taken root in her heart. Evan listened attentively, offering support and validation, something Marina hadn't felt in a long time. He noticed the subtle sadness in her eyes, the way she tried to hide her frustrations with her marriage. As weeks passed, Evan's presence in her life began to feel like a balm to her wounds. He made her feel seen, important, and alive in a way Lucas hadn't in a long time. With every passing day, the connection between Marina and Evan deepened. Their conversations shifted from casual to more personal. Marina found herself sharing more than she ever thought she would, her fears, her desires, the longing she had buried deep inside her. Evan listened without judgment, offering a kind word or a comforting touch. He made her feel valued in a way she hadn't in years. Slowly, the friendship evolved into something more complicated. The emotional intimacy they shared blurred the line between friendship and something deeper. Every smile, every glance, seemed to linger longer than it should. Marina began to feel a spark, a sense of excitement that had been absent from her life for so long. Evan had become more than just a friend. He was the person who made her feel alive again. Yet, beneath it all, Marina struggled with a growing sense of guilt. She was betraying Lucas, but at the same time, the connection with Evan was something she couldn't deny. She felt conflicted, torn between the life she had with Lucas and the emotional fulfillment she found in Evan's company. After months of building emotional closeness, Marina and Evan's relationship crossed a line. One evening, after a long talk about their respective frustrations, they found themselves alone, vulnerable. What started as a comforting embrace turned into a passionate kiss, an expression of all the unspoken emotions they had both been carrying. Marina felt a mix of guilt and exhilaration, torn between the woman she was and the one she wished to be. The affair was her escape, a fleeting moment of freedom from the suffocating routine of her life. The guilt was ever present, but so was the rush of excitement. For the first time in a long while, she felt wanted and cherished. As the affair progressed, Marina became adept at hiding it from Lucas. She carefully crafted her double life, balancing family duties with secret meetings and whispered phone calls. On the outside, she was still the loving wife and mother, but inside, she was someone else, someone who craved more than just the role of wife and mother. The affair with Evan was a lifeline, and though she knew it was wrong, she couldn't bring herself to end it. Lucas began to notice small, uncharacteristic changes in Marina's behavior. At first, they were easy to dismiss. A late-night phone call with a vague explanation, a sudden shift in her mood when he asked about her day. But as the weeks went on, the signs became harder to ignore. Marina was more secretive with her phone, frequently checking it when she thought he wasn't looking. She began spending more time out of the house, claiming she was helping with a charity event or attending yoga classes. There were times when Lucas would come home to find her dressed up, her eyes avoiding his, as though she was trying to hide something. The small shifts in her behavior didn't add up, and yet Lucas pushed the thoughts to the back of his mind. He didn't want to believe that Marina could be anything less than the devoted wife he thought he knew. But deep down, the gnawing feeling of betrayal began to grow. He couldn't ignore the doubts anymore. Something wasn't right, and Lucas wasn't sure how much longer he could ignore the mounting evidence of her secret life. One evening, as Lucas was cleaning up the living room, he found a bracelet under the couch. It was delicate, silver, with small charms that seemed unfamiliar. It certainly wasn't his. His heart sank. Marina had always worn her jewelry with pride, but this was a piece he didn't recognize. When he confronted her about it, she casually explained that it was a gift from Evan, a token of appreciation for her work at the shelter. But Lucas's gut told him something was off. The explanation seemed too rehearsed, too dismissive. He couldn't let it go. Over the next few days, Lucas began to dig deeper, checking Marina's phone records and social media activity. The patterns were undeniable: late-night texts to Evan, cryptic messages, and phone calls that lasted too long. The evidence, though subtle, pointed in one direction. Marina's secrecy was no longer a coincidence. Lucas's heart ached as he realized the painful truth. His wife was having an affair, his world was falling apart, and he had to prepare himself to confront it head-on. Devastated but determined, Lucas decided that he needed to gather undeniable proof before confronting Marina. The pain of betrayal weighed heavy on his heart, but he knew that confronting her without solid evidence would only leave him vulnerable. He began to monitor her movements, installing discreet cameras in the house and carefully observing her interactions with Evan. The more he watched, the more his suspicions were confirmed. Every look, every touch between them seemed charged with something deeper, something illicit. As he watched Marina's behavior shift before his eyes, Lucas's heart hardened. The emotions that once filled him, love, trust, and hope, were now replaced with a cold determination. He became numb to the pain, focusing only on the task ahead, exposing the truth. The idea of confronting Marina filled him with dread, but he knew it was the only way to regain control of his life. As the days passed, he continued to collect evidence, knowing the moment of reckoning was near. It would be painful, but it was the only way to bring the truth into the light. Lucas decided to confront Marina in front of close friends and family. It wasn't a decision he made lightly, but after weeks of watching her lie and deceive, he needed to expose the truth. He invited their closest friends and family to dinner under the guise of making a big announcement. The room buzzed with excitement, unaware of the storm Lucas was about to unleash. As they sat down for the meal, Lucas stood and cleared his throat. Everyone grew silent, sensing the tension in the air. With a calm but steady voice, Lucas began to speak. He revealed Marina's affair with Evan, presenting the evidence he had painstakingly gathered. The shock was immediate. Friends gasped, family members looked around in disbelief. Marina's face drained of color as the truth hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Her eyes welled with tears, but the guilt she felt was drowned out by the embarrassment and shame of being exposed. Evan sat frozen, his attempt to speak privately with Lucas rejected. Lucas, voice trembling with anger and hurt, announced his intention to divorce Marina and seek full custody of their children. The room was silent, the weight of betrayal settling over everyone. Marina broke down, her sobs echoing through the room, but Lucas remained firm. The damage had been done and there was no going back. In the days following the confrontation, Marina's life unraveled. Friends and family turned away, unable to look past the betrayal she had caused. The social circles that had once embraced her now distanced themselves, leaving Marina to face the consequences alone. Her reputation was tarnished, and the guilt weighed heavily on her. As for Evan, his once pristine reputation was forever damaged, and he found himself ostracized from the tight-knit circle of friends he once enjoyed. Lucas, however, remained focused on his children. He moved into a new apartment, ensuring that Lily and Max had a stable environment away from the chaos. He put their well-being above everything else, focusing on their needs as they navigated the fallout of the affair. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, Lucas knew he had made the right decision. Marina was left to pick up the pieces of her life, but for Lucas, the focus was on healing his family and creating a new beginning for himself and his children. Adjusting to life as a single father wasn't easy for Lucas. There were days when he felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for Lily and Max on his own. He missed the moments when he could lean on Marina, but he knew that he had to remain strong for their sake. Slowly, Lucas built a routine that worked for them. He was more present, more involved in their lives, making sure they felt loved and supported. Marina, on the other hand, struggled with her newfound isolation. The reality of losing her family was a heavy burden to bear. She sought therapy to understand her actions and the reasons behind the affair. The guilt she carried was unbearable, but she knew she had to face it if she ever hoped to move forward. In time, Marina and Lucas began to meet to discuss co-parenting arrangements. Though their relationship had been shattered, there was a mutual desire to ensure their children grew up in a healthy, stable environment. It wasn't easy, but they knew that for their children's sake, they had to work together, even if it meant putting aside their own pain and resentment. As time passed, Lucas found himself slowly healing. He met Sarah, an old colleague, who became a source of comfort and understanding. Their friendship developed naturally, and for the first time in a long while, Lucas felt a sense of hope. He began to open up about his past, sharing the pain and betrayal he had experienced. Through his conversations with Sarah, he realized that while the wounds of his marriage might never fully heal, there was a chance for a brighter future. He spent more time with Lily and Max, rediscovering the joy in being a present father. Each day, Lucas worked on rebuilding his life, taking small steps toward regaining his trust in others. It wasn't easy. He was still cautious, afraid of repeating the same mistakes. But with Sarah's support and his children's love, Lucas found the strength to move forward. The journey was long, but he knew that healing was possible, even if it meant taking it one day at a time. He was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, knowing that his resilience would carry him through. Marina's life had crumbled, and she was left with nothing but the weight of her choices. Her affair with Evan had destroyed her family, and the isolation she now faced was unbearable. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, she decided to write a letter to Lucas. She poured her heart into it, apologizing for her actions and the pain she had caused. She expressed her deep regret and acknowledged how much she had hurt him and their children. Marina wanted to make amends, to rebuild some form of peace for the sake of their kids. The letter was a reflection of her desire to atone for her mistakes and start anew. When Lucas read it, he was struck by the sincerity in her words. Though their relationship could never return to what it once was, he agreed to meet with her. They needed to talk, for the children's sake, and perhaps for their own healing too. Lucas and Marina met to discuss how they could co-parent effectively for the sake of their children. The tension between them was palpable, but both knew that moving forward required putting aside their pain. While their relationship would never be the same, they agreed to work together for Lily and Max. There was a quiet understanding between them. Trust had been shattered, and healing would take time, but they could still offer their children stability and love. As Lucas left the meeting, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. The journey ahead would be difficult, but he had taken the first steps toward rebuilding his life. He no longer felt burdened by the weight of his past. He gazed out at the city lights, a quiet sense of hope settling in his heart. There were still challenges ahead, but Lucas was ready to face them with resilience and a renewed sense of purpose.